Financial well-being, an extremely important topic that many medical students, residents, and junior attending ignore early in their career and realize how important it is later on. In this episode, I brought a special guest who will talk to us about his personal experience with financial well-being from being a plastic surgery resident in New York to junior attending. Welcome, Dr. Frey, to the channel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Can you start by telling our viewers here about your journey and why you became interested in this topic?
Yeah, so I'm a little less than 2 years out of training. And so I had, like you, I did plastic surgery residency, and then I did a fellowship. So that's 7 years after medical school. And at the end of my training, I found that I felt really burnt out. And there's obviously a lot of reasons for that. But for me, I realized after a lot of reflection that my finances or lack of financial well-being was a huge component of that, really kind of the major component in my case, because I was finally about to graduate training and everyone was telling me like, oh, it's going to be awesome. You're going to be making like money as an attending finally. And I just didn't feel like it was going to be awesome. I had like $500,000 of debt, student debt, credit card debt. I had no savings, no investments, and no idea even where to start with that. So once I recognized that that was a huge contributor to my burnout, my wife and I decided, okay, we need to, try and look at the mistakes that we've made and learn about this stuff and take control of it. And so I did that, and within a few months had created a financial plan, realized that this stuff wasn't as complex and intimidating as it seemed. And just having a plan that I knew I could follow to reach financial freedom, to improve my financial well-being, I mean, that improved my burnout so much. I was able to focus on what I loved in medicine, taking care of patients, operating and helping people. And like I said, my financial well-being just skyrocketed.
Awesome. And I saw that you had a course about helping physicians with that. And we can talk about that in details at the end. But it's very exciting to see someone who went through these challenges, had burnout in the beginning, tried to find a solution, and now they're trying to share this knowledge with other physicians to help them with this problem.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's why I started my blog and then ultimately got so interested in this is I've honestly at this point still yet to meet someone coming out of training that was in as deep a financial hole as I was. And so I like to show that if I can start working my way out, really anyone can. And then the other problem I found with a lot of physicians who are talking about personal finance, a lot of them were sort of at the finish line, like almost shouting instructions back, which is helpful. But I didn't find anyone that was really going through it. And so I thought, well, I want to like put all my stuff out there, be totally transparent and show my mistakes, the things I did right, wrong, the bumps along the road as I'm going through it, because that can be a lot more relatable. And I think that's been really, really fun. It was scary at first, but it's a lot of fun to share that and to meet people going through the same thing and to have that shared experience.
Yeah, definitely. Now that you know the information that you went through, do you think if you applied this information at the beginning of your training, it would have made a difference, considering your salary is already limited, you don't have much time to do other things? Do you think this would have made the difference if you knew this information before?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Hands down, yes. Because I speak to so many residents and talk to them about exactly what I would do different. And it's all about building these habits, which again, in residency, your time is limited, your money's limited, and your focus needs to be on learning to be the best doctor that you can be. That's 100% got to be your main focus. But I've also experienced how neglecting well-being, including financial well-being, can have such a negative impact. So you don't want to do that. The same way you don't want to neglect, your self-care and things like that. So there's a lot of simple things you can do as a trainee, even as a medical student or someone, that is in the research fellowship track to make a big difference. And I can talk about some of those if you're interested in that.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's start with a few tips to our viewers, considering that most of our viewers here are early in their route, graduating from medical school, starting their residency. What you wish you knew at that time that can help them with this journey?
Yeah. Number one thing is start your education, financial education. So what I did was, because again, I was still a trainee and I didn't have a ton of time, but I just chose one financial book that I said, I want to read this book this year. And the book I chose was The Millionaire Next Door. That's a great one. And I just tried to read like 5 to 10 pages a night when I could. If I had a crazy day or whatever, I didn't. But I just tried to do that. And what I did was I subscribed to a financial blog. You can choose any of them. And I just read one blog post a day. And I did it like in the morning before rounds, or I would do it in between cases. And those habits took maybe 10 or 15 minutes a day. But by the end of a month and then the end of a year, it was amazing how much more I learned and understood. So that's a really small habit that can have huge returns. And then the second one, more directly related to actually improving your finances, try to create a savings rate. Some people may be looking and be like, well, duh, obviously, but it's all about paying yourself first. Usually when we, the end of the month or whatever, if we budget or if we don't, we're used to paying everyone else first. We pay the rent, we pay our subscription services, etc., and we take what's left over. And most of the time there's nothing left over. I know throughout all my training, there was nothing left over. I didn't save anything. In fact, I took on credit card debt. I was paying above. And that's a mistake. What you want to do is try to at least save a little bit. And again, as a resident, it's very hard because you're not making a lot of money. So just try to save, like what my wife and I did when we started learning about this stuff. We just said, okay, this month, we're going to try to save 1% of what we make. And the next month, we tried to save 2% and 3%. We've probably got as high as 5 or 6%. But then when I made that transition to being an attending, that idea was ingrained and that habit was ingrained. Now we save like 50% of our income. And that makes a huge difference. So it's really about developing that habit. And then the other thing, as a resident, come up with a strategy to pay your debt. And I say that because I had 7 years of training. I totally screwed up. I deferred my debt the whole way through. I could have done minimum payments with public service loan forgiveness and had that 7 years. And basically with that, I would have had the rest of my debt forgiven next year if I did that. But I didn't do it because I was stupid. I buried my head in the sand. I tried to ignore my debt because it scared me. You may not be in that situation where public service loan forgiveness is an option, but you at least want to look at your debt, come up with a plan to pay it. Maybe you use that savings rate you create to pay off a little bit because it adds up a lot. And even if you can just pay off the interest, you'll be in a much better position once you start as an attending to pay it off quicker. Because that's really what your goal is going to be, is to pay off that debt within 5 years. That's what my plan is. That's what I'm on track to do. And that once you can eliminate debt, you really kind of have control of your finances. So I think those are three really, actionable, simple things that people can do, especially early on, that make a huge difference.
I have multiple questions following on this. I want to start with the loan forgiveness. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about this and what does it mean?
Yeah, so the public service loan forgiveness, it's a program created by the government that basically says if you work for 10 years in it's basically a not-for-profit hospital institution, and you pay an income-based payment for those 10 years, then at the end of the 10 years, whatever of your student loans are left over are gone. And that only applies to federal loans, not private loans. So it's a great option, especially all residency programs are going to be in qualifying institutions. So if you have a longer training period, it just makes sense to, apply for that program, keep good records, pay off the minimum amounts. And then, at the end of your training, you can see. And like I said, for me, at the end of my training, I would have had 3 more years of payments, and that's it. And then the rest of my loans would have been forgiven. And also when you're in training, obviously your income is a lot lower. So your income-based payments are low, are really manageable. If I did income-based payments now as an attending, they would be much higher. And if I paid that for 10 years, any forgiveness would be, minimal. So that's why it doesn't work so much for me. But people at the beginning of your training, it can be a really good option for.
Awesome. And the other point that you mentioned is trying to save a percentage of your salary. And honestly, seeing here coming from Syria, being in the US, I realized that some people live above the amount of money they make. They spend too much money in things that are not necessary, but more for luxury of life, having fun. I assume that trying to save money, higher percentage each month, means that you need to sacrifice on some things or change in your daily habits of eating, drinking, going out. How is that for you?
Yeah. So for me, it's all about intentional spending because, yes, saving is good. And the more you can save, the quicker you can get out of debt and build your wealth and reach financial freedom. And that's all great. But you also need to like enjoy yourself. And that's part of well-being and self-care. But I think what people in general, and especially physicians, are really bad at is being able to tell like what purchases are going to bring them joy, because we have so much delayed gratification. And, you know, a lot of times we just buy things impulsively, we get that dopamine hit, and then all of a sudden it fades and we're left going like, oh man, now I'm, you know, I just racked up credit card debt for that. Like that kind of stinks. So the equation that I always run in my head now, and I'm not perfect at this, no one is obviously, but regardless of the dollar cost of a purchase, I just think, does it fit within my financial plan? Meaning, can I still reach my financial goals if I buy it? If the answer is yes, then that's obviously, you know, you move forward. If the answer is no, then you can't do that. But then the next thing you have to think is, does the purchase price, does the joy I get from this purchase, is it greater than or equal to the purchase price? If the answer is yes, then you should buy it. If the answer is no, then you shouldn't. And that sounds really simple, but we just don't think about those things. Like I can think back in training, again, things that I put on credit or spent that I probably, you know, at a certain point threw out or wasn't worth the money I spent on it. But I did it because impulsively I felt like, you know, I wanted it, and I didn't run this equation. And that's just kind of how it goes for a lot of people. And I think it is really a cultural thing, because I beforehand, as silly as it sounds, I just thought the money you make, you spend it. That's just from growing up or whatever, but that's what we did. We didn't have this concept of saving until, you know, it really came back and like I said, was creating burnout. And I'm very fortunate that I learned about this before my salary went really high. Because what happens to a lot of doctors is their salary goes really high. They just start spending more money. They buy the huge house, the luxury cars, etc. And again, that's all fine if it fits within your financial plan and the joy that it brings is equal to the price. But most of the time it doesn't fit in the financial plan. They're going into more debt. They're spending more than they have. And that's when you see these physicians working way longer than they want to, longer hours, staying late, picking up overtime because they have to cover this lifestyle. And they're chasing their tail. And that's a position, you know, my goal would be to see no physicians in that position ever. You know, we're lucky and we're high income earners. There's just no reason we should be doing that.
We talked about saving a percentage of your salary, but the main question that people ask, where should I put this money? Should I put it in the bank and make 0.001% interest rate of that? Or should I put it into stocks, buy a house, rent? Some places like in New York where you did your training, it's almost impossible to buy a house. So what do you think is the strategy to make use of this money that you're saving?
I think, especially for trainees, the most generalizable answer is kind of two places. One, I think paying off debt is always a good option. If you have credit card debt, that's like a financial emergency, because that's like almost 25% interest sometimes. But even if you just have student debt that's a lower interest rate, when you pay that off, you get a guaranteed return. If your debt's at 6% and you pay it off, any amount, you know, you get an immediate 6% return. So that's a great option. If you're going to invest it differently, what I recommend is investing in the stock market with what's called index funds, which are essentially a collection of stocks that mirror the overall stock market or an index of it. And that's a safe bet because you're only investing money that you don't need for the long term. So like 20, 30 years. And the overall stock market over time has always gone up. Now investing in individual stocks or trying to time the market, those things have been proven not to work. Just passively investing based on the overall market, that beats active investing 80% of the time. So especially as a resident, I'd recommend just, you know, maybe open up a Roth IRA, which is an account that's tax advantage that you have access to as a resident while you're in that resident salary category. Later on, when you're an attending, you'll be too high a salary to contribute directly to that. But you can contribute, open a Roth IRA, invest in the overall stock market with some index fund, and essentially just forget about it. And that's the beautiful thing about that. And again, as a resident, even as an attending, you're focused on your clinical responsibilities and taking care of patients, and that's what we want to do. This is a way to ensure our financial well-being that really takes minimal effort and is very safe.
Awesome. Any final tips for our resident viewers, for the young attendings who are watching us, medical students who are trying to go into residency, for financial well-being, and how they can plan this journey ahead?
I think the biggest thing that I can say is that you can do it. For so many of us, and I was in that position, it just seems like such a scary, complicated, intimidating topic, but it's really not. And like the fact you did medical school, you did residency, like all these things you're doing are way harder than personal finance. So you can do it. Just start small, even if it's just starting, like I said, with the education component. Even if you're not doing any action right at the beginning, just start learning about this stuff, because you'll become more comfortable around it. And then it'll be much easier to take action when you feel informed. So that's the main message, is you can do it. And again, like I said, I was really, really in a bad place, and you can get out of it just like I did. And if I can do it, you can do it. I'm definitely not any smarter. I'm sure all of you are much, much smarter than me. So you can definitely do it.
Before I end up, I want to tell our viewers about your course. Can you give our viewers an idea about what the course entails, the main ideas that are discussed, and a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's a course, it's called Graduating to Success. And it's basically everything I wished that I knew about personal finance, and also about the transition from being a trainee to an attending. So it's an 8-week course that has 12 modules, hours of content, things from finding the perfect job to optimizing your practice to debt management strategies and building your financial foundation, and much, much more. And it's got a ton of downloadable guides that you can use that will ultimately help you create your own financial plan to reach financial freedom. It also includes a lot of live Q&A components and some individualized coaching. So I think it's really, really great. And the people that have gone through it have just seen their financial well-being explode. And I know with your audience, we're running a special sale, which is really great. And I appreciate you helping with that. But I think it's really an awesome thing that can apply to any physician, any trainee, anyone at any point in their career.
And I'm very excited to be hosting this coupon that I'll give for our viewers, that you can find in the description below. So if you go on the course link, apply the coupon, and you get a great discount on this amazing course. And if you're not satisfied with the course, there is 100% refund back. So
absolutely,
it's risk-free. So yeah. I would highly recommend, start investing. This is an investment you put in your future. Putting few bucks into a course that can teach you how to save thousands, maybe in the future millions of dollars, is definitely worth it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Frey, for this amazing advice about financial well-being. This is a new topic that I was introduced to by you reading your posts, your blogs. It was very exciting to know about this, because as you said, we are high earners and we should invest our money and know our plan for our finance, so we can be well at the end of our training, residency, early career, because that can reflect on our patients. If you're burned out, you won't be able to take care of your patients well.
Exactly. And I totally found, as my financial well-being got better, I became honestly a better doctor. So what you said is so spot on. And thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
For our viewers, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or Twitter at Malki Assad, my Facebook page, Malki Assad MD, or our email, info@thematchguy.com. I hope this episode provided you with some helpful tips to start your financial journey early on. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and see you in future videos. Peace.